You've probably heard the news say recession, but your gut might feel more like depression. So which is it? Are we in a crash, a recession, or something worse? Today we'll break down the difference between a crash, a recession, and a depression. Let's start with the basics. A crash is a sudden, sharp fall in asset prices. Think of stock markets, house prices, or other investments dropping fast, often in days or weeks. Headlines scream about markets plunging, and portfolios shrink overnight. A recession is broader. It's a sustained slowdown across the whole economy. Jobs get harder to find, spending drops, businesses cut back, and growth slows for months, not just days. A depression is much rarer and more severe. It's a very deep, long-lasting downturn with extremely high unemployment and large drops in output and trade. Instead of one bad year, people talk about a lost decade. So in simple terms, a crash is a sudden shock. A recession is a long, painful slowdown. A depression is a deep, lasting crisis. Now let's see how these played out in the US. In 1929, the US stock market crashed. Prices plunged, banks failed, and confidence collapsed. That crash helped trigger the Great Depression of the 1930s, when unemployment soared and many families struggled to survive. In 1973, the US faced a different kind of pain, a recession with high inflation. Oil prices spiked, prices at the store rose quickly, and jobs became scarce. People felt squeezed from both sides, higher costs and slower income. And in 2008, the US housing bubble burst, leading to the Great Recession. Home values fell, banks got into trouble, and millions lost their jobs or homes. It was severe, but not as deep or long as the Great Depression. Over the next few minutes, we'll look at each of these in more detail, what they are, how they start, and most importantly, how they feel for ordinary people. Because understanding the difference between a crash, a recession, and a depression can help you make better sense of the news and your own life. Let's open those three doors one by one. First, the crash. A crash is sudden. Often it starts in financial markets. Stocks, bonds, or house prices fall sharply in a short time. Investors panic, sell quickly, and prices drop even more. In the US, the 1929 stock market crash is the classic example. Newspapers called it Black Thursday and Black Tuesday. Within days, billions of dollars in value vanished. Many people who had borrowed money to buy stocks lost everything. But a crash is not the whole economy. It's like a heart attack in the financial system. Dangerous, but not automatically the same as a long-term illness. Sometimes a crash leads to something worse. Sometimes it does not. That depends on what happens next in the real economy. Jobs, businesses, and everyday spending. Now let's look at a recession. A recession is a broad, sustained slowdown. It's not just markets. It's jobs, income, production, and spending across many sectors. In the US, experts often describe a recession as a period when the economy shrinks for several months, not just a few bad days. For ordinary people, a recession feels like this. Job openings become scarce. Some workers get laid off. Others see their hours cut. Families delay big purchases, cars, homes, vacations. Businesses cut costs, freeze hiring, and sometimes close. In 1973, the US entered a recession, triggered partly by an oil shock. Oil prices jumped, raising costs for transport, heating, and food. At the same time, growth slowed and jobs became harder to find. People felt squeezed, prices up, income down. That combination, high inflation and weak growth, is often called stagflation. It made the 1970s feel confusing and painful for many households. Now, compare that to a depression. A depression is a much deeper, longer downturn. Unemployment is extremely high for years, not months. Many businesses fail. Some people can't find work for a long time, and entire communities struggle. The Great Depression of the 1930s in the US is the clearest example. After the 1929 crash, the economy didn't just slow, it collapsed. Factories closed, banks failed, and homelessness rose. Families moved in together, relied on charity, and waited years for recovery. So, to summarize this part, a crash is a sudden, sharp drop in asset prices. A recession is a long, painful slowdown across the whole economy. A depression is a very deep, long-lasting crisis with severe unemployment and hardship. Next, we'll look at how these three connect and what they mean for you today. So far, we've seen how a crash, a recession, and a depression are different. Now let's connect the dots. Crashes often come first. A sharp fall in stock prices or house prices can shake confidence, hurt banks, and make lending harder. If the damage stays limited, the economy might slow down but recover. That can mean a short recession, not a depression. But if the crash is deep enough, and if banks, businesses, and households are all badly damaged, the slowdown can become much worse. That's how the 1929 crash helped trigger the Great Depression. The financial shock spread into the real economy, jobs, incomes, and everyday life. In 2008, the US faced another serious crash in housing and finance. Home prices fell, banks got into trouble, and credit froze. That led to the Great Recession. Millions of jobs lost, many homes foreclosed. But policy responses from central banks and governments were faster and stronger than in the 1930s. So while it was painful, it did not become a full depression. Now, what does this mean for you? When the news says recession, it usually means growth is weak or negative for a while. Jobs are harder to find or keep. Companies and households are more cautious with money. When people talk about depression, they mean something much worse. Very high unemployment for years, widespread business failures, a long period of hopelessness for many families. A crash can feel scary in the moment, especially if you invest or own a home. But it's important to ask, is this just a financial shock? Or is it spreading into jobs and everyday life? For ordinary people, the difference shows up in daily choices. In a mild recession, you might delay a big purchase, tighten your budget, or worry about your job. In a depression, you might face long unemployment, lose your home, or depend on help just to get by. History also shows that not every crash leads to a depression. Sometimes strong institutions, better regulation, and active policy help contain the damage. That's one reason why the 2008 crisis, though severe, did not turn into a 1930s-style depression. So when you hear recession in the news, remember, check what's happening to jobs, income, and spending, not just stock prices. Compare the depth and length of the downturn to past episodes. Ask, is this a sharp shock, a long slowdown, or a deep, lasting crisis? Understanding the difference between a crash, a recession, and a depression won't remove all risk from your life, but it can help you read the news more clearly, plan more realistically, and worry a little less about the wrong things. Because in the end, these aren't just economic terms. They're stories about how millions of people live, work, and survive, and how they recover.